let us start by creating the participant schema. So this is basically the schema that is going to map with the database table, and using that we can query the database. So for that, what I can do, I will create a folder called repositories. Here all my database related schema as well as the helper function will sit. So for that, what I will do, I will create a new file and name it as participants schema.js. Then what I will add here, so the first thing that I need is to import mongoose from mongoose. Then I will create the schema object, which is const participant schema equals to new mongoose dot schema, and it will take a configuration object. Now what we have to add in this configuration object, all our database table properties. So first will be name. Now what will be the type of name? Of course it will be string. And is this going to be a required parameter? So I'll say yes, this is required. Then what else we can add? Let us add age. So what is age? This will be type of number. Is this also required? Yes, let us say this is also required. Then what is next? Role, like whether they are actor or director or producer, right? So for this, what I can do, I'll say type will be string. Of course this is also required, true. And then what should be the role? So what I want to do, I want to make it like actor or director or producer, right? So somebody might add actor, somebody might add actors, right? Somebody might add actor, right? So if I give the freedom to add whatever value they want, there will be spelling inconsistency. So for that, what I will do, I will force it to be a set of enum, right? Whatever I will add in that enum, only it will take those values, nothing more than that. So for that, what I can say, enum, and pass a array of string. So then I can say actor, then I can say director, then I can say producer, right? Now this is hard coding of magic strings, which I don't want to keep it in my schema file. So for this, what I can do, I'll move it to constant and import it. So I'll open my constant file. From here I will say export const participants role equals to producer, actor, director, musician, and writer. Now I'll go to my schema file. First thing what I have to do, I will import, participants role from constants.js. Then here I will, instead of doing this array, I will add this participant role. Right now, what is role? It can be only producer, actor, director, musician, and writer. In future, tomorrow, if I want to add more roles, I can come and add it in one place. Right? So this is the participant schema. Then when the participant schema is done, let us in the same line complete the participant repository. So it will have all the CRUD operation, and this is database specific implementation, right? And what I want to do is this schema, I want to move it to a folder called as schemas, and I will move it inside this folder. Then in the repository I have schema, then I'll have the repository methods or the repository files. So what I can say, participants repository.js. Here I need two things, one is mongoose and one is my schema. So first what I will do, import mongoose from mongoose. Now coming back to this schema, what I have to do, I have to create the model from this schema. So for that what I can do, const participants equals to mongoose.model, right? And what name we want to give it, we'll give it participants. And what schema it has to use, so I'll say participant schema, and export default this participants. Now this participant I will import here, import participants from schema, then participant schema.js. Then what first function I will add, let us add a function to get all participants. So I will say export const get all participants, and this is going to be an async function. So first what I will add, I will say const result equals to await. Then what I will do, participants dot find. That means I am not giving any filter condition, so it will find everything. Then if for whatever reason it is not able to find anything, I will return an empty array. Otherwise I will return the result. Then we will add one more method, that is to create participants, so that we can test whether we are able to create, and then we will try to fetch all. Then we will subsequently add other methods. So I will say export const create participant by name. So this is going to be an async function, and what things it should take. So if you check the participant schema, it should take name, age and role. So what I can say, name, age, role, right? So now with the help of this parameter, I will create a participant object, right? So const new participant equals to new participant, and pass the new object name, age, role. Then this is just created in memory. Now in order to actually commit it to the database, what we will do, await new participant dot save. Now this will actually go to the database and save it, and whatever it returns, I will add it to a variable. Then what I can do, return the result. Now we have created two repository method. Now we will create the service layer and use this repository methods. So if you see here in the src and parallel to the repository, I'll create a new folder called services, and I will add a file called participant service.js. Now what I have to import from dot slash repository slash participants repository .js. And what I have to import, I have to import get all participants and create participants by name. So these two things I need to import. Then I'll write the service equivalent method to get all participants and create the new participants, which in turn will call the repository equivalent method. So for that, what I will say, export const get participants. See, this is the plural name. Okay, so I will say async, and since this is being called by the controller, it will take the request and response object. Then what I can do, const result equals to await, I'll say get all participants, right? And then what I can do, I'll say res dot status, which will be 200, and what will be the JSON value, we will simply pass the result. Then what we can do, we will write the create participant method. So export const create participant, and again this will be an async function which will take request and response. Then in order to get the name, age and role, we have to use the request object. So what I can say, const body, right, equals to request dot body. Or what I can do, I can destructure name, age, role from request dot body. Then const result equals to, I will just pass this variable to the repository method. So I'll say await create participant by name, right, and it is expecting name, age and role. Then res dot status, what will be the status? This will be status of 201, that is resource successfully created. Then JSON, what we will say, result. Now what we have to do, since we are using this request.body, in index.js we will add a middleware. Now if you don't understand middleware yet, that's fine. All we have to do is add some piece of code so that we can access request.body. Otherwise, in general, we cannot access that. So for that, I will add two pieces of code, that is app.use, right, and what, express.json, and app.use express.url encoded, and we will pass option extended to. So I need these two pieces of code, or technically middleware, so that the code can parse the request body, and I will be able to use this kind of syntax, request.body, and then do the destructuring. Now this being done, we will move our focus to controller. So repository is done, service is done, and then I will create new folder called controllers, and within this controller I will add participant controller.js. Here what I need, do I need mongoose or repository? No, I need only the service. So controller is only concerned with service. It doesn't care from where the service is getting its data, right? So for that I need the express. So import express from express. Then I need to import the to service method. So I will import something from dot slash services slash participant service .js. Then from there what I will import, get participants and create participants. Then what I will do, I will create a router, const router equals to express dot router. So I have created a router, and in the same line I will export default router. Then on this router I will attach a get method, router dot get, on which path, on the slash, on the root path of the participants path, right? So URL will be localhost slash participants. Then what method I will call, I will call get participants. Then I will use the create participants, so it will be router, and what method I have to use, I have to use the post method, because as per the convention of REST API, if you want to create a resource you have to use the post method. So where it will point it to, on the root path. Then I will attach create participant method on this one. So repository is done, which will give data to service. Service is done, which will give data to the router. Now router is done, and then what we have to do, we have to attach it to the index or in this app, right? So for that what I will do, after this ping, and before that I have to import it, right? So what I can do, I will say import participants from dot slash controller slash participants controller dot js. Then after this ping I will say app dot use, on which path it will use the participants router. So I will say slash participants, and which router I have to attach here, I have to attach the participants router, right? So if you see the flow, when somebody is pinging the participants route, it will call this participants route handler. Then it has a get and post method. So depending on if it is a get method or a post method, it will call this relevant service. So for example, it is calling the, someone is calling the get method. So this get method will call the get participants service. Now if you come to the get participants service, you will see here this intern is calling its, fetching its data from the repository, right? And this repository is ultimately getting the data from the database, right? So that is the flow. So if I do a save, it is saying successfully connected to the DB and server has started. So if I go to this postman, let us check the ping, it should be working, and it is working. Then I'll go to participants, then get all participants. Now if I do a get call on this URL which is pointing to the localhost, then I'll call participants. So when I click on send, we are getting an empty array. That means we don't have any data yet. Then what we can do, we can go to the create participants and try to create some participant, right? So if you see here params body, I'm adding one data, name, age and role. So now if I click on send, you will see status is 201 and these three values were created, and this is the ID and version that is created from the database, right? Now if I go to get all participants, what do you think we will get this time? Is it going to be an empty array, right? No. So this is an array of the participants object which contains the ID, this name, age, role that we have sent, and the version. This version is automatically created at the database level as well as this ID. Now let us start implementing other methods. So we will start again from participant repository, right? So repository, so we have get all participants and we have create participant by name. Next, what I want to add, get participant by ID or get single participant. This is returning an array of participants. What I want is I'll pass a participant ID and it will just return that particular participant. So for that, what I can do, I'll say export const get participant by ID, and this is going to be an asynchronous function, and this will take a parameter. So I will name it as participant ID. Then so this participant ID, so what should be the type of this participant ID? So if you open Postman, right, this is the pattern of the ID that is returned by the MongoDB. So what I want to do, I want to first do a validation if the ID that is sent is actually a MongoDB ID or not, right? So if you see here, I will copy this one. This is a valid MongoDB ID pattern, right? And there is a possibility that somebody might send 1, 2, 3, right? So if you see here, this is definitely not a MongoDB ID, but if you see, this is a MongoDB ID, right? Or a pattern that matches the MongoDB ID. At this point, I'm not sure if a participant with this ID exists or not, but this is actually a valid MongoDB ID format, right? So for that, I'll add a validation that if it is actually a MongoDB object type. So for this, what I will do, and my editor is saying there is a spelling problem, right? Right, so I fixed the spelling issue. Participant, right? So first I'll do a MongoDB ID validation, right? So if mongoose dot types dot object ID dot is valid, and what this will take, this will take the participant ID, right? So and if this is not a valid ID, okay, that means somebody is sending value like A, B, C or 1, 2, 3 like this, right? This is not a valid MongoDB ID pattern. Okay, now don't confuse this with the concept that if this ID exists in the DB or not, right? That we'll do a separate validation. This ID might or might not exist, but what I am checking here is if this is a valid ID pattern, right? Not a garbage value that is being sent. So if this is not the case, this is not a valid participant ID, then I will do console.log invalid object ID, and what I can return, I can return null. Then what I will do, I will now query the database. Now I have done the validation. Okay, this participant ID is a valid ID. Now let us check if this ID exists in the database or not. So I'll say const participant equals to await, right, participants dot find by ID, and I will pass participant ID. Now If this participant ID doesn't exist in the database, that means I'll not get a valid participant object. I'll not get a valid participant value here. So what I can do, I'll say if not participant, then what I can do, I can return null. I didn't find anything. Then if this is a valid participant ID, what I will do, I will return the participant, right? Then we will implement the next method, that is update participant. Then for this I will add export const update participant by ID, right? And this will be a async function, right? And what parameters you think it should take? Of course it will take the name, age and role, that is for sure, right? Otherwise what value it will update, right? And another parameter that it is going to take is of course the participant ID, otherwise how it will know where to update, right? So if you see here in the postman collection how I will send the request, if you see here, I'll come to body, right? So here I am sending the new value as well as passing the MongoDB ID, right? Based on this ID it will update these new values, right? So I am receiving the participant ID, name, age and role. So here I am using this participant ID. So what I can do, can I do this validation here also? Of course I should do, right? So I will paste it here. Then what I can do, my next step is update it, and MongoDB gives me a function find by ID and update, right? So if you see here, there is a find by ID method. So here we are passing only the participant ID and it is giving us the found participant. Here there is another method called as find by ID and update, so which will take combination of this participant ID as well as this object name, age and role. So we will add that function const result equals to await participant dot find by ID and update, right? And what first parameter it will take? It will take the participant ID, right? This is the ID, it should update. Then it will take the object name, age, role, right? This is the new value that it is supposed to update for this participant ID, right? Then if not of result, that means if it could not find or if it could not update, that means the result will be empty. So I will say return null, otherwise return result, simple. Then we'll add the next method. What is the next method? So if you see the CRUD operation, create, read, update, these three are done. Now delete. So I will say export const delete participant by ID, right? Now if you think what parameter it should expect, async. See, to delete the participant, all it needs is the participant ID, right? So all I will take is participant ID, nothing else is needed. So here also I should do this validation, right? If this is a proper MongoDB ID format or not. Then and here as such delete doesn't return anything, right? So I'll say return false. That means whether the delete operation succeeded or it did not succeed. That's all I want to send from this repository. So then what I will say, const result equals to await participants dot find by ID and delete. So what this will take? This will take the participant ID. Then what I can do, if not of result, then return false, otherwise return true. This now makes sense. Now the repository methods are done, right? Then next what we will do, we will update the service, right? So participant service. So here I will import all the methods. So get single participant by ID, then update participant by ID, then delete participant by ID. And now what I will do, I will add little formatting, right? So I'll put each of them in different line so that it is easy to read. Then what I will do, I will add the corresponding service method. So first what I will do, we already have get participants, then I can say get participant or get participants by ID, right? So I'll say export const get participant by ID. Then this will be an async function, right? Then this will take request and a response, and this is the arrow function. Then how would I get the ID, right? And how I'm getting this ID? So if you see here, this is the get participant by ID. So here in the params, I have to send the ID. So for that, what I can do, const ID equals to request dot params dot ID or empty string, right? If the params dot ID doesn't exist, this will default to empty string. Then const result equals to await, right? Get single participant by ID. This is the repository method, and I will pass the ID. So it might return the participant, it might return null value. So I'll first check if not result. That means it might be a null value, right? So here I will say res.status. What will be the status? 404 not found. That means this ID is not found. Whatever you are trying to send, that ID is not available. And I can add a message. So I will say participant not found, and then return from here. Otherwise res.status 200 and JSON value will be result. Then update method, right? So I will say export const update participant. This will be async, right? And as usual, it will take request and response. Then here I need two things. One is the ID from the params, and one is the new updated object from the body. So for that, what I will say, const ID equals to request dot params dot ID, then const name age role. This will come from request dot body, right? Just like how we have done here in the create participant method. Then const result equals to await, right? Await. Then what method? Update participant by ID from the repository method. this one, update participant by ID. And here, if you remember what parameter this is taking, participant ID, then name, age, and role. So here I will send ID, then name, age, role. Then here what I can do, I can check the same thing here. So I'll just copy from here, add it here, same thing. If for whatever reason the result is not valid, then I will send 404 and then participant not found. Then we will update the delete method. Export const delete participant. This will be an async function, so this will take request and response. Then what first I have to do, I have to first get the ID. So const ID equals to request dot params dot ID. Also here, like how I have done this kind of error handling and fallback, that also if you want you can add here, right? So I'll add this question mark, otherwise it will fall back to default empty string. So here also if you want you can do this. You should actually do this. This is a good practice. Then here what value I am expecting, like what will be the return type. So here then I will say const status equals to await. I will call the repository method and it will take the ID. Then this value is actually a boolean value, right? So here also I can add the same thing. So I'll say status, right? And I will name it as result, because anyways we have status here, so it might give name conflict. So I'll say result, right? And if not result, then 404 participants not found. But here when you are trying to delete something, of course it will be deleted and the client is not expecting anything. So here what will be the status? 204, no content. And what will be the JSON? Of course no content, right? Then what we have to do, we have to update the controller. So here first I will import all the methods, right? So get participant by ID, right? Update participant and delete participant, and here also I can do some indentation, right? Then router dot get, and I want to call get participant by ID. So what will be the pattern here? So if you see here, update participant, here I am passing the path, after that I am attaching the ID here, right? So how can I represent it in the controller? So here I can say dot ID, right? That means participants slash, if there is a ID, it will match this routing pattern and it will call get participant by ID. Then what I have update. So for that what I will add router dot put, right? And that is also expecting the same route path, right? Then what method I will call? Update participant. Now if you see this pattern and this pattern is similar, the only difference here is the method that is it is being called upon, right? Then I will attach router dot delete. Here also it will take the same path and we will attach the delete participant method. So repository is completed, service is completed, we have attached it to the controller as well, and that controller is already available in index.js. So now we can test it. So if you come here, we will send get all participants, right? So we will get this ID. I will copy this one, then I will come here, get participants by ID. This is expecting a ID, so I will paste that ID and I will send the request. So I will get this ID. Now what is the difference between these two? This is getting us the single object, right? And get participant is giving us the array, and here there might be multiple objects, right? Currently in our database we only have one item, that's why we are getting only one value, but this is an array, right? And this is an object. Then what we can do, let us do update. So I will copy this ID, and if you see here age is 46, right? So I will come here and I'll try to update it to this new age. Everything else is same, but only difference is age. I am changing it from 46 to 52, right? And then I will come here and send the request. But if you see here, this age is 52, and but here I am still getting 46, right? So for this, what we have to do, we have to actually go to this participant repository, and here find by ID and update will return the old value. So in order to overcome that, what I have to do, I have to add a new property here, that is new to true. Okay, now I will save this one, then I will come back to Postman, right? Get participant by ID, right? So now if you see, this is actually updated. And how it was updated? From this participant it was actually updated, but the result that I get was the old object, right? So that's why now when you do the query, you will get 52, that is the new updated object, right? So what I can do, I will change it to 30. Okay, then I will send the request. Now you are getting 30, that is the updated value. Now if you do this get participant, now also you will get 30. Then I will copy this one, and then we will go to delete participant, right? And here I will add this, copy this one, then I will send the request. So if you see here 404 no content, that means it was deleted. How I will be sure if it was deleted? I will send get participant by ID with this same ID here, and let us see what value we are getting, right? Participants not found, that means it is deleted from the database. And what will happen if I do get all participant? Of course we'll get an empty array, right? So we are able to create, update, read and delete participants. So our basic CRUD functionality with MongoDB is completed here. And in the next video we will start hooking up Redis, so that we will gain some performance optimization, and also it will reduce some load from our database. And I will see you in the next video.